good evening, good night, wherever you may be, wherever you are listening. I just want to tell you something right now. You are now with the Black Powder Podcast. I am your host with the most extraordinaire.
Applause.
Stop, please, thank you. Please stop. Marcus
Wow.
Matthews, the
You can
only
tell who's
real
the church of
libertarian.
sound. And
And well, I wanted to introduce you, but I don't think you truly need an introduction. This is Tub.
so wasn't it salt was it salt and pepper back in the day when they started song I don't need no introduction. That was salt and pepper, wasn't it?
I think
I
it
think I
was
think it was. I think that's who that was. Listen, I don't need no introduction. We'll just get at this. Now we can mention that Eric will not be joining us tonight. He has
for a good reason.
family engagements going on.
Yeah.
That's
Eric, we wish you the best. We hope that you could sit there and watch or listen, whatever you need to do. You know, these are the important things in life, Eric. Watching
and
the
don't
Black.
mess it up by watching us.
No. It is the Black Powder Podcast. Whatever else you got going on, Eric, it is not as important at this very moment than paying attention to what we're about to do tonight. And Tub, I want to get to some pleasantries because I know it won't be much more pleasant
Right.
going
This is gonna
forward.
be it.
Yeah, how are
This is
you
it.
doing, my good man?
I'm doing well. Listen, we'll see how all this shakes out.
Yeah,
Okay. Because it's just us now this week. Well, except for we have a guest coming on that you'll take care of, and
yeah.
and we don't like each other.
No, not at all.
And since we don't like each other, it's going to make this show very difficult. All
Uh,
right. So,
yeah.
you know what's funny though is I wonder, and maybe we could ask this. Maybe somebody can get in the comments and say, I wonder if they think that we really don't like each other.
I want to let everybody know tonight, my ensemble, my fit is for Tub. It's all woodland camouflage because I suspect when Tub is not at his altar or on this podcast, he wears camouflage and overalls everywhere he goes because his name is Tub and he lives in backwoods, Florida.
All right, hang on. So I'm not that Florida, and I'm certainly not in the backwoods of Florida. I'm in Jacksonville. No, if you would ever leave California, except for to go to New York,
Yeah,
you would understand that you know what that Florida is not always the way you seem to think it is inside of
it
your
is
little California world. Now, as I was saying though, if I wonder if they think that we really dislike each other because that what you're wearing has nothing to do with me.
everything.
Nothing at all. But it's very telling of how you see people. You're very, I'm not going to call you racist because I don't think you're just stereotypical. That's all it
Like
is.
that is a goal of mine every day. And this LA right
Racist or
here,
stereotypical?
both.
Okay.
This LA right here stands for Lower Alabama, not Los Angeles.
No, no, you listen,
But
that is your Los Angeles. Because I know you keep trying to talk about, was it from Alabama? You keep trying to say, well, I'm from Alabama. Like when you was like 6 months old or something like that.
no, less. I was actually born in Texas and I moved to California when I was 2 weeks old.
So you were
Speaking
never really in Alabama? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I spent a lot of time. I went to college in Alabama. I
That
still
means
have.
nothing then. That
Yeah,
means nothing then.
my father was a deacon in the Southern Baptist
Oh, there
Church.
it is. There's the one we like to put out. Hey, if you could say that one more time and mention that you guys have the fourth largest economy, we'll be off to a great start.
Well, you're getting ahead of me here because I wanted to talk about the Libertarian Party of the fourth largest economy in the world,
There you go.
and they had their convention this past weekend, which I very much enjoyed. One of the things I took away from it, I truly believe libertarians are not the intended product of the public education system because there were some very eclectic people there. The tism was strong. The tism was
Oh,
like, oh, it
yes.
was raining down on us. And I met a lot of people and I was like, dude, these are some cool people. One of these cool dudes that I met, he was like, probably the most straight-faced guy in the room. I mean, he came in there like, I'm here for business, and business it is. And he's from a group called the Advocates for Self-Government. And this is an organization that goes all the way back to 1985. They're about to celebrate 40 years of success. And I call it success because when he went up there and they introduced him, I was like, that's the freaking coolest name I've ever heard. The Advocates. And it turns out I actually already followed them on Facebook and Instagram and social media. And I was like, dang, I don't know if they're being what do you call it when people are not being shown? They have a term for it.
Did you fanboy them?
No, actually I did. I went up to him. I was like, because he gave a great speech. I was like, bro, that was awesome. And I'm not going to hold this guy back any further because I can see him backstage. He's just chomping at the bits, ready to go at it. And he just like, oh wait, he smiles. I never saw him smile at the California convention.
The term you're looking for is deplatformed, I think.
Yes.
Censored.
Yes. Because we're starting to get deplatformed here because Facebook was having to pay us a little bit of money, enough to keep the lights on. We're not driving brand new cars or anything, but without further ado,
are you using Facebook money to pay your light bill in the garage?
You know what? Let's get.
Is that what you're doing with this? All right, go ahead. Do what you're supposed to do. Go ahead.
Without further ado, I want to introduce Mike Sertic from the Advocates for Self-Government to the Black Powder podcast. Welcome, my good man. How are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Word.
So we know that you had to deal with Marcus over the weekend, and we apologize that you got to deal with him for another hour tonight. All right, but please don't hold that against all of us. All right. Wow. So
no, not at all. No, I enjoyed it actually. Marcus came up to me after I talked, and I think he was like the only guy in the room taller than me. So that's always a little bit unsettling. All
right. So now I have to ask, how tall are you?
I'm about 6'4".
Oh, so you're about pretty close to the same height then?
I think
I'm
so.
I'm 6'5".
Yeah.
But
of course you are. Of course you are. All right. So now, Mike, if you will, like we talked about, take as long as you want, explain your organization, explain how you got involved, explain why you stay involved, and explain kind of what I was wondering is kind of what you guys do basically day to day inside of the organization.
Sure. Yeah. So let's see where to begin. So the Advocates for Self-Government has been around since 1985. And a little bit of backstory, since we were just talking about the Libertarian Party of California, the LP was actually largely developed and really kind of took off in California. And I think even to this day, it has one of the largest, certainly one of the largest registered voter pool in the U.S., but they also have a lot of activity happening here in California. But the idea here was for the Advocates for Self-Government is that they would go out and they would start talking to people about libertarianism, about the LP. People didn't really understand what the philosophy or what the ideas were. In fact, oftentimes I'm told, because this was a little bit before my time, they would kind of get blank stares and people would sort of ask them, well, is that like a liberal? Is that like a liberal or something? And so anyways, Advocates was formed to essentially be a grassroots organization dedicated to expanding public awareness about the philosophy and ideas of libertarianism, what it actually meant. And their catchphrase was, there's more to politics than left and right. Because at that time, people only thought in terms of left and right. There were conservatives and there were liberals, and you were either one of those or somewhere in the middle along that spectrum. Marshall Fritz was an IBM salesman and a libertarian, very passionate about these ideas. And he decided that he wanted to give up, the computer sales business and go into selling liberty. So in '85, he founded the Advocates for Self-Government out of Fresno and built up a whole organization around him of people who could articulate effectively what libertarianism was. And the key innovation that the Advocates drew from was actually the founder of the Libertarian Party, David Nolan. And David Nolan had written this kind of seminal work while he was, I think, a graduate student at MIT that basically sought to classify political types. And he looked at how libertarians were different from the existing kind of political landscape. And from that, Marshall Fritz said, we got to figure out how to explain this to people very quickly, succinctly, in a way that just kind of clicks for them. Because there's a lot of people out there that are politically homeless. They don't fit neatly along that spectrum. There's something more. And so David Nolan had added this additional axis It wasn't just this axis of left-right, but it was persuasion versus coercion, or another way that you can think of it is libertarianism versus authoritarianism. And so from that, the world's smallest political quiz was born. And over the last 40 years or so, the Advocates for Self-Government has been using the world's smallest political quiz on college campuses, at county fairs, state fairs, gun shows, local events, wherever people congregate and they don't get kicked out. Libertarians can show up and start handing these quizzes out as part of our Operation Politically Homeless event, and sort of raise awareness about these ideas. And I think as of right now, we recently cracked over 30 million quiz completions just on our website.
Wow.
But we've distributed hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of the physical quizzes in these OPH events. And of course, other people have kind of ripped off the world's smallest political quiz. So it's all over the internet now.
All right. So how did you get involved?
Oh, yeah.
And like, what do you do there specifically? And kind of like what I asked, like, what does your day-to-day with the organization look like?
Yeah, so I'm a product of Students for Ron Paul and the Ron Paul movement post 2008. I was kind of a byproduct. I wasn't involved in Students for Ron Paul directly, but I heard about it afterward. And I remember going to see him at UC Davis. I'm here in Sacramento, California. And I remember going over there and I was just really impressed. Here's a politician that speaks his mind. He's a little weird, like how he talks, but I like the cut of his jib because he's honest. You could tell he's passionate. He really believes in what he's doing and the message. And it was just so refreshing to me. And you saw, millions of young people appreciate that kind of honesty and integrity from a politician. So I went down the liberty rabbit hole, started reading different books, End the Fed. I got my hands on some Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard and the Austrian economists. I switched my major to econ and started up a Students for Liberty group on college campus. One thing led to another, and I learned about a guy who had operations not too far outside of Sacramento. He was a big libertarian philanthropist and supporter. Asked him if he would, help fund my college recruitment activities. And eventually that led to an internship, which then led to a job after college. And from there, in 2017, he asked if I wanted to take over operations for the Advocates for Self-Government. So I've been back for about 8 years now.
Okay. Let me ask you this, because you have a very similar story to our other co-host, Eric Parker. And a lot of millennial type individuals that heard Ron Paul and it changed their political perspective at the court. What was your disenfranchisement with the duopoly that changed your mind about politics in general?
I grew up. Yeah, so I had grown up in a pretty conservative household, and I remember watching Fox News every night. And there were a couple of things that put me off of, sort of the Republican Party and Republican pundits. Hannity and Combs was on during prime time.
Oh,
here you have Hannity, who's this very, forceful personality. He's very articulate, but he'll talk over. He would just beat Holmes down.
He would berate him to death. Yeah, he's from California too, which is amazing.
Yeah. And so I just, not that I was sympathetic to the liberal perspective in particular, but I also didn't have, I wasn't entrenched in Republican rhetoric. I didn't have strong opinions about this or that. I was very kind of open-minded, but I had conservative values, but I wanted to understand the world and the situation around me. And so a lot of these sound bites and talking points didn't really resonate with me. I found them kind of off-putting, the way that he would treat guests and just berate people. And that between that and the Iraq war, and then later on how the Republican Party treated Ron Paul during the primaries, I realized this isn't a party that I really can ever see myself supporting. So,
you would love Eric. Yeah, you would love Eric, because same thing. Eric is a veteran, and he went to Iraq, and Ron Paul worked on Ron Paul. Didn't he work on Ron Paul's campaign, Tup?
I think that was just his in. I don't think he worked on the campaign. I think that was his opening to hey, wait a minute, this is
Wow.
But then later on, I kind of decided that politics wasn't really something that I was passionate about. I joined the LP for a period of time. I got active as vice chair of the county party, and my hat's off to the people who are still involved with the Libertarian Party and trying to keep it going.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
But for me, I found that my calling is much more in the domain of education, of civic activism to an extent, and outreach. And so that's really what the Advocates is focusing on more than anything, is educating the public that what libertarianism is, and that there's a very good chance that they're much more libertarian than they realize, and that libertarianism offers actual, real, sustainable solutions if you understand that Nolan chart, those two dimensions that I was describing earlier. So we teach people about these things.
So when we were running here in town, because the other host, was actually here in town. We ran together basically, and so inside of that, we found that we spent a lot of our time explaining to people who the LP even was. Like they had no idea. All right, and it seemed odd because we've been around for a while, but we have. Here's what I said. The first time I spoke to a group of libertarians, I told them, I said, listen, I says, we have the best message and the worst messengers. And they didn't turn on me too hard, so it worked out all right. But inside that, so I wanted to ask, because your quiz, I call it yours. You own it now. It's all yours now, Mike. All right. So your quiz, you're right, makes the rounds. Like if libertarians are somewhere, that little quiz usually ends up passed out somewhere. Here's my question though. So we get people to take it, and you'll find, like you said, a lot of times people will fall into that libertarian category. What do you see as what I refer to as the conversion rate? So when you start having these conversations, they start going, wait a minute, yeah, I get it. Do you find that they just go, yeah, I get it, and then stay in their parties? Or are you seeing they're at least being open to, let me see how I can change this?
Yeah, so let me break that down a little bit. The first thing I'll say, it's hard to tell because I'm usually not out there doing registration drives like for voters. So it's not really my objective as a 501c3 organization to get people to register to vote. But I know that a lot of Libertarian Party organizations and county affiliates across the country use them, and they use them effectively. What that exact rate is, I'm not sure. But what I do know is the percentage breakdown of how people score across all 5 sectors in the Nolan chart, roughly speaking. And currently, roughly a little bit under 30% of people score in the libertarian sector at the top of the chart. In my experience, of that 30% of people that score as libertarian, a very small percentage of those folks actually really understand what libertarianism means. But of course, we're also usually handing these things out and giving them to younger audiences. So it's younger people that really aren't familiar with libertarianism still. I think that we've done a phenomenal job of raising awareness about libertarianism to older generations. But of that 30%, a lot of this as far as the people that take the quiz, it's done digitally now. And so that's where most of our traffic comes on. And, our conversion rates are measured by email subscriptions, things like that. Right. The number of people that remain on the page and visit other content and interactive programs on our site.
So do you tend to steer people, like after you've had the chance, like what your follow-up is, I guess, from your online stuff? Do you have a chance to steer people like towards candidates? Or I know you probably can't get too far involved in that with the association, but as a whole, are you finding that, hey, we're getting this to them, and it looks like our numbers for voting for libertarians is increasing in your area specifically, we'll say?
That's a great question. What I do know about that, I was having a conversation with a guy out in Indiana. This was back in January of this year, and he's very active. A guy named Evan McMahon. He wouldn't mind me mentioning his name, I don't think.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah, I know.
We'll
I
see how
guess
that
we'll find
goes.
out. No, he's a rock star out in Indiana. He's very active in organizing and working with the LP out there. And he was telling me that he encourages all of the county affiliates to use the world's smallest political quiz and these Operation Politically Homeless outreach events, because not only do they raise awareness, which on the education side, which is what my organization does, but they also use them for voter registration, and they use them for membership too. And they've used them, I think, very effectively for both of those activities.
So Joe said
the
state chair and now the LNC secretary. So we're gonna reach out to Evan and try to get him on here based on Mike's word. If he turns us down or does anything sideways,
because of Marcus.
Mike. But here's our first question. Has any of the questions been updated lately as far as your political quiz versus when you guys started it?
Yeah, so the questions have gone through many evolutions over the last, I guess it was really the late 80s. The earliest version of a Marshall Fritz World's Smallest Political Quiz that I've been able to find was, I think, 87 or 88.
Yeah.
Over that time, they've made a lot of changes. There's been a lot of different versions. I don't know, as far as like canonical versions that the advocates officially put their copyright on, I know there have been several. The most recent version that we developed was, I think we made changes to it last year, actually. We waited until after the election to make some changes, so we recently updated it. But one of the things that we're seeing is that some of the questions haven't been performing optimally in the way that we expected. So I'm actually in the process right now. You know, you were joking a little bit earlier that it's my quiz.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, it kind of is.
All right.
I get to make the changes, but I mean, I don't make them arbitrarily, and I seek. It's in consultation with other colleagues of mine, with other people who use these things. We do typically ask surveys from people to let us know what they think, if there's changes that we should make. And so that I extend that invitation to you and your audience too. They're welcome to send feedback about what they think. But I'm on a draft right now currently, and I expect that we'll probably be releasing it within the next month or so.
So this one that I'm currently looking at on your website, this is the one you're referring to. What's going to be changing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me ask the question, because we were talking about before we got started, and so it seems, I'm going to say odd for a moment. We'll just use the word odd for a moment. That we do hand these out. You see the effects of it. You see how people respond, and yet we don't see the LP growth, if we will. Like we don't see candidates winning office. We don't see party involvement, kind of like what we were talking about with your convention out there this past weekend. The numbers were low for you guys. Also, same thing issue we had here in Florida. You getting the information that you get and kind of being, you're kind of hands on the, you're really kind of feet on the ground in this one. So what do you think? And this may not be you speaking for the association anymore. This might just be you speaking for Mike. Okay. So what do you think is our issue about how we can get people to agree with us, but we can't get people to join us?
That's a great question. I think that's a question that libertarians have been asking themselves for decades, actually. And again, part of the reason why the Advocates was actually founded was to become essentially a marketing outlet, a marketing organization for the ideas of liberty, to teach other libertarians how to effectively communicate these ideas. Because I can't tell you how many times I have seen other libertarians start talking to people. You know, it's like the overzealous convert phenomenon. We've all experienced it, whether it's veganism or libertarianism or whatever. Like, you just want to grab somebody and shake them and say, you know, you got to believe this. Have you heard of the non-aggression principle? You know, and it's like, hold on, buddy. Let's take a step back and figure out how we can actually understand what the concerns of our audience are and start from there, rather than trying to explain to them how other people are statist, or how coercion doesn't work, or things like this. It's like, real people have real problems. what do people want? Your average Joe is interested in making sure that, the cost of living is manageable, that they got a job where they can pay the bills, that the local public school, the education system is going to work okay, that their kids aren't going to, be undereducated and have behavioral issues when they get out of public school. Again, I'm not defending public school.
Right.
I'm all in favor of finding voluntary solutions to these problems, but you got to meet people where they're at first, and don't turn them off by talking about ending welfare and
okay, right. See, that right there is what I've said for a while now. I said, so here's what we do as libertarians. We get all excited about something. We have our topics and our issues, and we go, all right, you guys need to get as excited as we are about our issues. And the things that are issues for us aren't even on most people's radars. Like it just doesn't fit in. So like we had to learn that a lot when we were running locally. You start talking about, listen, there's a lot of things that libertarians believe in that doesn't really hit the local level very well. The things we get excited about. And so I usually refer to people, I says, guys, I'm the libertarian that says, hey, why do I have to have a permit to put a shed in my backyard? Like that's the libertarian. I'm more of a, hey, what about these issues? And the party doesn't do so well sometimes getting on the issues that people, like what you just said, what people care about. And I think that at some point we have to get past that. And are you learning some of the issues as you get these results back from these quizzes and stuff? Like, are you seeing enough to go, hey guys, shut up, you should be talking about this?
Yeah, so that's actually something that I've been looking at very closely with respect to how we're going to modify the quiz questions. Because part of the reason why we change them periodically is because they become stale. They're no longer really an issue that people care about. The whole purpose of the world's smallest political quiz is that these should be very topical issues that people already kind of have a general opinion about. You don't want to ask them a simple question on a quiz and have them look at you funny, like, what does that mean? Like, for example, maybe we ask one about, people know what it means, but we'll ask people, should there be a draft, or there should be no draft? Well, that's a legitimate question, but how many people are waking up every morning and thinking, oh man, we really got to end the draft? This is a serious problem. I'm not voting again until a party comes out and really lets us know what the position on the draft is. So we changed that question a while back. And that's, I want to collect data that's actually relevant for the people that are out there advocating these ideas most, and let them know how people are responding to these things. Because if you start having conversations fluidly from the quiz to the concerns that people already have, you're much more likely to draw them in to libertarian policy solutions. So
you mean to tell me that when you...
So I just want to say this real quick.
Go, Marcus. Just go. I'll say nothing. It's your show, Marcus. Go ahead.
You had the last segment, my man.
No, just go.
I just want to say this. I have never met an introverted libertarian. I don't even think they exist. And there's one comment that I had from the convention. This was my first convention that I went to. And I just said to myself, none of these people were the intended product of the public education system. Because the from day one, you enter the public education system, they're telling you to line up, go to your assigned seat, sit there quietly and wait until you're called upon and raise your hand if you have a question. They're teaching kids authoritarianism from 4 or 5 years old. And then you get them out into the real world and they're afraid to step outside of that demagogue that they've been indoctrinated into, that, authority ultimately is the last say in their lives. And they believe government is this omnipotent entity that knows what's best for you. And with that being said, I'll pass it to Tub. I'm sorry I had to interject on the podcast, but
I'm questioning why you're here. Mike and I are doing fine. All right. So let's be very clear. Listen. So, all right. So first off, are you telling me that when you removed the question about the draft, you didn't just get this massive backlash from all the people outside the party asking why you're not asking about the draft? Like somehow that didn't just turn your whole quiz upside down?
I mean, there were a few emails that were a little nasty because,
Libertarians.
yeah,
Libertarians. All right. So now I have a question for you, and feel free to go, Tub, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Okay.
You will say that.
I
too.
hope you don't, but
Yeah.
you can. Okay. So is it possible to do like a macro versus micro version of the quiz? And what I mean, like, can you do one that's like big government, federal government type stuff, and one that's like, hey, local? How do you like I said? Should you have to have a permit to put a shed on your property? Should you know those type of things? Like, is it possible? And would that make any sense? Would that help? Would that help what you're trying to accomplish? To say, hey, then if you want to, because if you want to give candidates information, you got some people who are running at the federal level, and then kind of go, hey, here's this, hand this out as you're going around. But then you got guys like me who are running local. It'd be much easier to go, hey, what do you think about this? And those are the things that people will kind of be like, wait a minute, because that's my life. Because some people will dismiss DC. They'll just be like, I don't care. It's far enough away. They don't realize it really is affecting them. And so that you hit them close to home and win them over that way. So does it make sense, or is it even possible, or would it just be a complete waste of time to kind of have two versions of it?
No, that's actually an interesting idea that I've thought a lot about the quiz over the years, but I've never framed it in that dynamic, federal or macro versus micro, as you put it.
Right. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do think there could be some opportunities there. And I see what you're saying about local audiences being or political audiences that are running more on the local level versus the federal level. Those two different groups would be more likely to use one or the other.
Right.
I also think that you're probably going to see a lot more libertarians on the local version versus the federal one. It's so much easier to imagine how libertarian solutions can actually work on a local level, in my opinion. And I think it's a lot harder to understand how libertarian policy solutions work on a federal level.
Well, I think we won't get them at that. Like we keep running, and I understand why we run presidential candidates and stuff. But as a whole, we're not going to get that. We're like, to me, when the Libertarian Party runs presidential candidates, it should only be for the lower offices. It should only be to draw attention to these lower guys, because up here we're not getting any of it. Because people up at that level, they're not straying. They're not going to stray from, wait a minute, this is the most important election of our lifetime, and they're not going to jump off to the libertarian side in those. But I think that we have the opportunity to win locally, or to at least start impressing our ideas locally. And not to mention, what I've even found, is we can take some of our libertarian ideas and locally get them into like the Republican Party. That, like, when we were running and we were at different events, we basically got the Republicans in particular, that we basically got the Republicans to start taking on some of our talking points, where they had to start answering these things, because that's where we were. And so I look at it, I can tell you, if I was running locally and I had a chance to hold something like that and go, wait a minute, hey, what do you think about these? And then all of a sudden now you guys and your quiz have done half of my work. I don't have to win them over with the argument. I go, hey, you test yourself, see where you're at.
What do you mean,
you
guys?
You guys, people like you, Marcus.
Okay, Mike.
I'm not talking about black. I'm talking about ignorant, not black. Don't worry about it. All right.
It would be interesting to see. I think we could probably create a local world's smallest political quiz. I mean, all localities are going to. I guess the one challenge is that different cities and communities are going to have different concerns that might be a little bit more relevant or timely in that particular area. But we could probably make it general enough. I think it'd be a fun experiment that we could put together. The other thing, though, that I want to understand is: are you suggesting that the LP shouldn't run like presidential candidates?
Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm torn on this one. Like I understand why, and I understand the ballot access issue. And I get those things, but I also know that it doesn't. To run as president and think that we're going to have a true effect at that level, it's just not going to happen. So that's why I said, Yeah, but I think that I kind of like what Lars's approach was. Hey, let's make some type of dent. Let's make some movement inside it. Something happens. But I truly believe that as we run presidential candidates, it truly should be, hey, I'm the Libertarian Party, and I think that in all honesty, we should. All right, here's how I'm going to phrase this. We should almost run candidates that are more in the middle of our party, that aren't so one side to the other. We because we're just spreading the word. We're just giving as at the presidential level. We're just giving the information. This is who we are. And I think that when we go to one extreme or the other, we've already lost people. So I think that when we can take our central candidates and go, hey, this guy here, he presents well, or woman, whatever. They present well. They know who we are. They stand by our beliefs. They're not crazy to one side or the other, and they're not going to be turned off. Like I think if we get a central candidate that won't push people away from the beginning. I think sometimes what we have is they automatically are pushing us away, like for whatever reason. Okay, they put us into a camp and we're done. So I get why we do presidential runs. I get it, but as a whole, I'm like, it's a lot of money that could be used at the local level, in which I think that's where we'll start making our impact first. But we're still not doing a very good job of it. We're still not. Like I said, we're still not getting the word out enough. People, like I said, I went around, and I'll make it as quick as I can. So I was walking neighborhoods when I was running, and I'm just walking around. There's a lady kept sitting in her driveway. She would just sit there. She's watching me. She watched me go from door to door to door. And so I came around. She finally comes up and she goes, "Hey, I was wondering if you were going to get to me." I'm like, "Yes, ma'am. Here I am." And so we started talking. I started explaining to her. She goes, "Oh, hang on a second." And she goes inside of her house. She comes back out. She has her sample ballot. And she goes, "What is the LPF?" And I'm going, "All right, that's fail number one." Okay. And then here's what happens. And then I go, "Hey, see that? Here's what was so funny about that. She had her sample ballot all filled out. And the only race she didn't have filled out was the one that I was in." And she goes, "Who's the LPF?" I said, "See that right there?" I said, "That's me." And then I was able to just kind of explain in her world what libertarianism looks like. And I was there. She marked it off. But I look at it, I go, she had no idea. She had no idea what the LPF was. She knew she was voting inside of her, basically she was probably going to vote Republican. And so she was going to stay inside of her world. And I look at that and I go, but wait a minute. I talked to her for a couple of minutes and she was like, got it. And I want to be very clear. It's not me. It's our ideas.
Definitely wasn't you.
And I think that, shut up, Marcus. I didn't know what you're going to say. I don't want to hear it. So what I say, I think that if we can do better about saying, hey, here's our simple stuff, not the extreme. Listen, I can tell you this. I never once mentioned ending the Fed. Not once. As I was running for city council, never mentioned it. And you know what? Nobody ever asked me. Nobody, as I was going around, nobody ever said, hey, what do you think about the Fed? No, nobody cared. Nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I want to point out this question from Joe, he's also in Florida. He's a Florida man like Tub. The short answer is no. Should local governments use taxpayer dollars to fund locals? No. I don't care. They can talk about all the economic incentives that it'll bring to the city all they want. No. The simple answer is no. I wanted to
subsidies for billionaires and millionaires who are the owners of these different
that is absolutely ridiculous when we have if you want to help out people, help out the average American. If you're going to go the whole socialist route and do that, at least help out like regular Americans and not billionaires. I want to get into the final segment because we're coming up on about 20 minutes left, and that is our constructive criticism of the Libertarian Party. That's how I'm gonna phrase that.
We only got 20 minutes for this.
We got 20 minutes.
You guys need to have me back on the show sometime.
Yeah, we'll start with that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. Who's going first?
We have Kenneth Blevins, Libertarian from Oklahoma. I think the next Libertarian presidential candidate should not run on a single plank. Yes. Any budget that lands on my desk that doesn't lead to a balanced budget will be vetoed, and any use of media to push down ballot access candidates. Valid points all the way around. Who wants to start off the constructive criticism segment?
We'll let Mike go, but let me say, let me no, go ahead. We'll let Mike go first. Go ahead. I won't get into my running. I don't want to go backwards. Keep moving forward. Go ahead. Mike, you get to go first.
I mean, I don't know exactly where to begin. I was involved in Sacramento County. I was vice chair of the LP for a while, but there was no real organization. There was no infrastructure. There was no real communication with the state party and national. There was no coordination. We just were kind of our own little island, and we didn't really seem to have a clear mission. There was no leadership really from the top down. And as a libertarian, I like decentralized, spontaneous order stuff. That's all great. But you need to run a political party like you run the military, essentially. You have command and control, top-down infrastructure. Libertarians don't like that. We were talking before the show, the sort of mindset, the type of personality and characters that are drawn to libertarianism and to get active in libertarianism. And I can relate because I'm kind of like this too. But you have some people that tend to be very rebellious, the sort of think for yourself, question authority, and you're just constantly questioning, which is good because it leads you down this rabbit hole of not believing what authorities tell you and not trusting politicians. But it also makes you very difficult to actually organize and work with at times. You also have the sort of people that are very abstract thinkers. So they're not very good in the persuasion game, which I think speaks to why we have so few effective communicators, especially at the political level. Candidates there's not a lot of great candidates who actually know how to talk about libertarianism in a way like you described, Tub, where you resonate with the concerns that people have and get them to check that box and say, oh yeah, that's what I am. That's great. Too many libertarians are describing abstract principles and, who would build the roads type scenarios.
Yep.
And,
So let me add to what you just said there. So that lady that I was telling you about, that she was sitting out in the driveway and she came out. So so I'm a pastor. So clearly I'm a Christian guy. I got no issue with this. And she had a bumper sticker on her car for her church. And so we started talking. I said, listen, I'm going to tell you right now. I told her, listen, I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor. I said, but I can tell you right now, I don't want government involved. I want my faith inside of our government. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I spent a couple minutes explaining to her. And by the time we were done, she goes, you know what? You're right. You're right. The government should not be pushing our faith. And she said it's our faith. She's like, as a Christian woman, she's like, you know what? If we take that time, what you're saying, and explain to them where they are, which is what we don't do very well, because what would have happened many times, candidates, they get up there and they shift it back to the big stuff that nobody cares about. Now, here's the thing. So, Marcus, how long has it been since Stephen Nicola was on here? It's been a little over a month or so.
Yeah, about a month, month and a half.
Right around. Now, let me be very clear. I like Stephen a lot. Me too. And I'm not just talking about remember, so he was our state chair. And he did a great job. I'm telling you right now, he did a great job. I like Stephen. I think he can do great things. So this is not a shot at Stephen at all. And I like him as a guy, too, outside of politics. And so I like him. But when he was on, I said, listen, Stephen, I'm going to be honest with you. I says, I'm the person you should be thinking about. And I said, let me explain that out. I said, so I ran for office twice as a libertarian. Okay. I was the vice chair of our local affiliate. I was the vice chair of our state party. And I'm doing nothing now. I says, I'm not involved. I'm not in any form of leadership. I says, before I was giving to all three levels of the party, and I'm giving to none of those levels anymore. And I says, and in all reality, I says, because people have asked me if I'm going to run again. And I'm kind of like, listen, I said, I don't know. And I said, but the people who are pushing me are local Republicans. I said, so here's what I'm getting at. I said, I'm not saying I'm the savior of the party. Of course not. But I contributed, and I was an active part of what's going on, and you're losing those people. And nobody seems to care. Nobody's like, hey, wait a minute. Tub, and listen, there's plenty of you basically were one of them who are like, I was involved doing the things. All of a sudden I go, you know what? This is getting us nowhere. And so I'm like, the party needs some form of organization, like what you're saying they don't want to do. They need some sort of organization that says, wait a minute, we're bleeding out people that can be productive for the party and who have been productive for the party. And I think that you're right. There's so much hurting cats that they can't get their focus right and go, hey, we need to have, like you said, that strong leader. And this has to get, whether we like it or not, we are a political party. And that's the reality of it. And so to be a political party and to be effective, you're probably got to change and do some things that you don't like. Okay, put that ego aside. If you're truly worried about liberty, then you go, okay, listen, I don't like this, but I understand the nature of the beast. And we have to fall into that. And it seems like libertarians don't want to. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that's changing. It seems to be we're kind of content. And then here's what happens when somebody leaves the party, they just go, well, they were part of that group, and they just dismiss it. And it's easier to do that. I wasn't a part of either one of those groups. In fact, Marcus, maybe you'll add to this because and you can go. I think you made the post or through the podcast post that you said that the caucuses probably shouldn't exist until we can get united.
That's exactly what I said today, and that's the fact that we have all these competing caucuses is why we can't coalesce around a common denominator, and the common denominator is liberty. That's if you call yourself a libertarian, you shouldn't be worried about certain specifics. And I want to mention I'm proud of myself for saying specifics because most
good job, very very good. Oh, what about that robotics you was holding on to earlier?
Yeah, I'm standing on both.
Your people are kicking you out.
Yeah,
you're part of us now.
If we're going to just basically disagree, I like to point to Nancy Pelosi, and I don't like her in any way, shape, or form. But when she was Speaker of the House, she had a 2 or 3 vote majority. Never in the history of Nancy Pelosi as a Speaker of the House did anyone deviate away from task. When she said, this is how we're voting, those jackasses got in line and pulled the rope in the same direction.
Yep.
Until libertarians can pull the rope in the same direction, we're irrelevant. And a lot of people are leaving us. One of our co-hosts, Michael White, we have Mike Termano on here. We had a bunch of guys that were pulling the rope for libertarianism and felt shafted because one thing I always like to mention this last presidential election cycle was our best and I hope not last opportunity to demonstrate that there is another option, because nobody wanted a Trump-Biden ticket that they wanted to vote on. And then when Biden dropped out, it was even worse. I honestly think Trump won both elections because the Democrats ran 2 of the most horribly hated candidates in the entire United States. That's why he won. To me, that's why he won. Because everybody's like, the America hates the Clintons. And I'm not trying to kill myself. I want to say that right now.
Let it be known you did not kill yourself.
No thoughts whatsoever, but America hates the Clintons. Kamala Harris, listening to her is like listening to 300 women with freshly manicured nails running across multiple chalkboards. It was in stereo effect. I could not listen to that woman for more than 10 to 15 seconds without utter disgust and like angst and anxiety. And I'm a Romeo. She was
so let me make one statement and ask one question then. So the one statement is this: if the Dems had picked up Kennedy the way that he wanted to run for them, they'd have won the election.
Easily.
They'd have won.
Easily.
Also, so my question is, so Mike, this is for you. So like what Marcus said, and he's right in the way he phrased it, in that we got to start pulling the rope together, basically. So how do we how do we get our people together and start pulling together that maybe we become effective? So basically, I'm saying we know the problem. What can be the fix?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I love the fact that after all these years, the Libertarian Party is still the party of principle. Okay. Even if not all libertarians in the party agree on what principle looks like in practice, I think the reason why there's still, and somebody was talking about this at the convention, the reason why the party still exists at all as a third party is because of this kind of unifying principles as our foundation. But we've also got to become the party of business. You were joking about how serious I was, dressed up and everything when I at the convention. We need to change the image as a serious party of serious people with serious solutions. And I think that when people start seeing the Libertarian Party run seriously, like an actual operation that's efficient with resources, they're going to start seeing outside investment. They're going to start seeing donors and potentially 5-6 figure donors coming back to the party and supporting the organization. Because while, you need that grassroots bottom up mobilization and membership support in those membership drives, which I understand Stephen and the party are working on building and implementing a strategy to do that. You can't have an effective third party without significant donors that are helping to fund your organization at both the national and the state level. And a lot of those people left over the last 10 years. A lot of those people left. I don't know if they'll ever be coming back. But if I was involved at leadership, I would be doing everything that I could to try to appeal to those people and say, we're working on getting these problems sorted out, but I don't know if it's too late or not.
So let me add to that then. So how do we unite the base? And when I say the base, because it's easier, like you're right, we got to get the organizational level up top in order, doing what it's supposed to do. But in order to be effective, you've got to get the workers, if you will. You've got to get them all moving in the same direction. How do we get the everyday libertarians involved and moving together?
I mean, what's the unique selling proposition of the Libertarian Party relative to Republicans or Democrats, would you say? I mean, I don't like to answer a question with a question, but what is unique about the Libertarian Party, and why should somebody be involved and vote for them that's different from these other two?
I would think we are historically for personal freedom. That's what I always say. Like, hey, we are historically for personal freedom.
But the Republicans would say that too.
Yeah, but we really are. They say that, you're right. But the thing is, with the Republicans, we can kind of go back and go, really? Personal freedoms, and then we have examples that we can point back to. So, but here's what I'm saying. To me, that's a reaching out type of thing. Like, how do we get outsiders in? How do we get our insiders in?
Can I answer that?
Yeah. What you got, Marcus?
It has to start at the local level, because, like I said, when I'm working on running locally for city council here in Chino, California, they imposed a 18+% tax on fireworks for the 4th of July.
There's all that freedom.
And the irony of imposing taxes on the celebration of opposing taxes is not lost on me. And the fact that recently we had a street sweeping ordinance. If there's trash in front of your house, that's your fault. You should be out there picking up the trash in front of your house. There shouldn't be anything in your gutter, in your street, leaves from your tree in your yard, whatever it is, that's your responsibility to pick it up. And they just imposed a street sweeping ordinance. If you're going to do that, do it on the public streets where nobody lives. That makes sense. Don't park on these streets on whatever day of the week they're going to be street sweeping on a public streets where, it's not somebody's property directly in front of it. And, those are the things libertarians need to focus on to show their effectiveness of principle.
Yeah,
at local level.
I would agree with that. And another thing that occurs to me is I think that the LP, with all of these caucuses and infighting, I think that too many libertarians in and outside of the party got far too heavily involved in the culture war.
Yes.
And it was very divisive, and you saw just a lot of mud flinging within the party. And I think the LP's got to back away from the culture war and start talking about the issues that really matter. It doesn't mean that You can't have your positions on various aspects of the cultural war, but what is the role of government in these things? And the LP needs to embrace people, whether they have, left liberal values or right conservative values. The Libertarian Party should be able to unite these people, assuming that they have a proper understanding of principle. And there should be room for all of these types. We just agree, whether you're left or right, that there's no room
government.
There's no room for government coercion or force in these domains. Let people be free to choose for themselves. And I guess it requires some degree of tolerance. And I hate throwing that word around because I don't want to sound like some progressive lefty, but you do need to have tolerance in an operation of the LP and apply principle, because you're going to encounter, the LP should be big enough to accommodate people who come from the left and the right.
And that's how I always tell people. I say, listen, I said, okay, so I'm pro-life, and we have other people who are pro-choice, obviously, inside the party. And I go, here's the thing we can agree on. Don't let government decide.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't want government to decide. Listen, I tell people all the time, I said, if you want to change society, don't go try to make laws. Go make Christians. Go out and make disciples, and societies change based on that. You don't have to have government do it. So I always tell people, I say, listen, we can have these differences inside the party so long as we agree on not government. Because that ultimately, each other in the party should not be who our enemy is. We got plenty of people out there in government who are the enemy, basically. So we have got to come together. So real quick before we run out of time, Mike, if you had a magic wand and you could make one thing happen inside the LP to make it more productive, what would it be?
Oh, putting me on the spot.
Yeah.
I would really love, I'll just be biased here and say I would love for every county affiliate, let's be realistic here in my wand waving. Okay. What I would really like to see is for every county affiliate to use the Operation Politically Homeless event in their communities, at events in the area, and start actually doing the grassroots mobilization and outreach in their communities that a lot of the LP used to do, that they haven't been doing, as far as I can tell, for a long time, and start actually re-engaging with their own communities. And they can find those resources through theadvocates.org.
Yeah. There you go, right there, dude. That's what I was just going to say. Here's a perfect segue to say, okay, hey, wait a minute. You have those resources. So how can your resources help the everyday libertarian help spread liberty?
So I was talking about this at the state convention. I'm actually an introvert. I don't really like talking to people if I can avoid it. And every time I've done one of these events, I'll gather up a few people, either from my colleagues or other friends, and we'll get out there, and it's actually a lot of fun. I've always enjoyed the conversations that I have. You meet some very interesting people with some very interesting ideas. You get to talk about things that you care about, and ideally you learn to do it in a way that's actually effective at communicating these ideas. And if you have any questions about how to do that, well, one, it's going to take a little practice, but two, we have resources available at theadvocates.org that can actually help you to be more effective at articulating these ideas and persuading other people to embrace them.
With that being said, as we close out, tell the people how they get in touch with your organization, how they become involved, social media, all that good stuff.
And also, do you guys raise funds? And how do you raise funds?
We do raise funds. Okay. So you can do most of this at theadvocates.org. That's theadvocates.org. And you can make contributions. We're 100% privately funded, no government subsidies for us, of course.
I was hoping you guys were socialists, but go ahead,
man. You can also find a link to our store where you can buy these Operation Politically Homeless events that we were telling you about. We also sell books and quizzes, and yes, there it is.
There it is.
And we're also on Facebook, I think, at SelfGov, and then you can find us on X and Twitter at The Advocates.
At SelfGov is the Facebook one?
Yes.
Marcus, we can wait to put that up, or can we post on the website after?
I'm putting it up right now.
Okay.
There's a long link, but it'll be in the show. the
full faith in you, Marcus. Full faith. I don't get to say that very often.
You can also contact us directly through forms on the website or send us an email at info@theadvocates.org. We'd be happy to chat with you.
All right.
And do you have any closing statements you would like to say before I hand it off to Tub for his closing, whatever they do in Florida?
I don't even know what I got. So I got a closing sentence maybe.
Yeah. One thing real quick is that, we were talking about the kind of infighting within the LP. Coming out of the California convention, I actually was pretty optimistic about the potential here, especially within the current political climate. I think that the new leadership that's coming in, I'm really hopeful that they'll make some changes. I think they're competent. I think they're capable. And I also think that it's a really critical time, not to sound like
cliche. Yeah.
What's that?
The cliche, like, oh yeah.
I don't want to fear monger, but I do think that we're in this kind of interesting position. We see it in the world's smallest political quiz results with increasing, nationalism and populism on both the left and the right, respectively, where there does seem to be this creeping towards embracing more authoritarianism in this country. And I really think it's up to libertarians like us and your viewers to start getting out there and educating them about libertarianism and about persuasion and coercion, and ultimately how these ideas of persuasion, voluntary community action are actually going to be far more sustainable solutions in the long term and aren't going to bankrupt us. They actually produce and create value throughout society. So again, I hope that people will consider looking at some of our products and some of the stuff that we do, and we'd love it if you would promote these things.
Excellent. Tub.
Well, Mike, thank you for coming on, man. We appreciate that you're willing to deal with Marcus for an hour or so. Trust me, we know it's not easy, but we appreciate it. And you dealt with him over the weekend, too. Listen, if we had to deal with him over the weekend, we would not have come on this show a few days later. I can assure you of that. Anyway, thank you for coming on. Thank you for doing the work that y'all are doing. And like I said, just keep plugging away whenever you want to. Go back on one of our posts and feel free to keep tagging you guys anytime you want to on side of there. Anyway, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Marcus.
I in closing, I just want to say, Mike, I would hope you would share this on your media, because this was a very informative night for a lot of Americans that are dissatisfied with the status quo that we have right now. I was telling a guy I've known since college that's a hardcore Democrat, we get one more choice than North Korea here in America. So we need to actually push a narrative, so to speak, that counteracts the authoritarianism and makes people think. So that's why it's so important we have people like you and your organization on the Black Powder Podcast. I want to thank you very much. Thank everybody who listened tonight. This is the Black Powder Podcast. I want to thank Tub for showing up. Obviously, Mike for making this what it was tonight, because this was an awesome episode. And with that, and what we always say when we end this podcast, live free
or die.
Peace.